give you a nice rundown about the history of these buildings, tell you about the architectural styles, the architects, the time periods in which they were built and how they represent the people and values of the time period. And it's kind of my specialty because I'm a high school economics and history teacher by trade until I jump onto this floating classroom during the summer months. What else am I going to tell you? Well, I do like a good story. Chicago, they have plenty of good stories. So I'm going to tell you about a few stories that focus in on different emotions such as destruction and despair, to hope and rejuvenation. And by the end of the 75 minutes together, I hope you have some kind of an emotional connection to this city, whether it's one of the particular architectural styles, buildings, or stories that really resonate with you. So folks, without further ado, let's float on and talk about our first building along the Chicago River. This building over here to your right with that clock tower. Fun fact about this, it's actually going to be built entirely out of chewing gum profits, because that's the Wrigley building. The first tenant that's going to be a part of that is going to be the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company. And it's not actually going to be made out of chewing gum, but it's going to be made out of 250,000 glazed terracotta tiles, which are kind of like porcelain. They're very fire resistant, and we'll talk about why that's an important thing in Chicago, but they need to be hand washed. So this building is actually going to be designed after a cathedral in Seville, Spain. And that's significant because American architects in the early 1900s, they were kind of like your little brother or sister that don't have their own definition of cool. So what do? They follow Big Brother. Who is America's Big Brother? Why, the European architects. We don't have our own definition of beauty yet. We'll talk more about that later on. All right, directly in front of you is going to be, we're going to jump to 2009 with Trump International Tower and Hotel. Take a look all the way at the top, and I want you to look at that white toothpick. That's a spire, and I'm going to talk a little bit more why that's significant later on. This is going to be a great example of contextualism, and let's break that down with what's going on here first. Notice these three setbacks. These are going to be these rooftop patio areas. The first one, same height as the Wrigley building that we just passed. The second one is the same height as Mather Tower. It's that building with the rocket ship on top of it to your left, right by that London house. The third one, just above us right now, is going to be the same height as this black boxy building over around the corner. You can see it now. It's the AMA building. So what is contextualism? Well, it's trying to flatter the context of your natural and man-made surroundings. You're trying to fit in rather than stand out. Heighten and flatter the context. It's kind of like the pieces of a puzzle all working together to make that beautiful picture. This building is going to be designed by Chicago's own star architect, Adrian Smith, and we call him the world's tallest architect, metaphorically speaking, because he might not be the tallest person to design buildings, but he designed some of the tallest buildings in the world, including the second tallest building in Chicago, Trump Tower. Take a look at that black boxy building. It's the AMA building that I was mentioning before. You'll see plenty of black boxy buildings in Chicago, designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. All right, it's going to be a concept called black box modernism, and I'll mention that, talk more about that later on. One of the students, though, of Bertrand Goldberg, not necessarily Bertrand Goldberg, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, one of his students, is going to be Bertrand Goldberg. He's going to design those corncob buildings there to your right. Marina City Towers is the official official name is Marina City Towers. Some fun facts about this: 1950s and 60s, people aren't living in downtown Chicago. Why? There's not a lot of entertainment and infrastructure to keep people in Chicago. So, what does he do? He creates what's called a city within a city. What does that mean? Well, it's the idea that you have everything that you need within the comfort of your own home. Take a look here at eye level. You can see right below where you live at Marina City Towers. You can dock your yacht. You can enjoy an evening at a restaurant. You can valet park your car, all in the comfort of your home. What else can you find in a city within a city? Well, shopping places to shop, grocery stores, bowling alleys, places to work out, office buildings. So, the city within a city is creating the gold standard for the stay-at-home order and what we like to call an introvert's dream. Also on the other side, you can find the Chicago House of Blues, a famous music venue. Take a look over to the left, that blue reflective glass building with the white granite stripes. That's 77 West Wacker. And then when we get to from underneath the building, I want you to follow those white stripes all the way up to the tippity top. And you'll notice that triangular roof. So 77 West Wacker with a white granite stripes all to the top. That's going to look like it's straight out of ancient Greek architectural style, because that's what's called a pediment, and you'll see that on a lot of famous ancient Greek buildings. This is going to be a concept called neoclassical, right? We're showing reverence and appreciation for the past and what came before. So this isn't Americans trying to copycat previous styles, but rather showing appreciation for past styles with modern materials. More on that later on. You'll see several examples on this tour. Back down to eye level, folks. I want to talk about the Chicago Riverwalk that you can see at the eye level to your left. It's going to be a $112 million project to bring Chicagoans and guests alike closer to the Chicago River. People are closer to the Chicago River, they become more interested in its well-being, right, and interested in its health and safety. So it's actually finalized in 2016, and you'll notice each different section of the Chicago River has its own specific theme. This part over here to your left is more amphitheater-style seating. It's a great place for people to relax, have their cup of coffee, enjoy their lunch, and we'll talk more about the other different themes along the Chicago River. Now, eyes up over here to your left, before we cross into the South Street, look at that big boxy building. That's the Builders Building. Something fascinating about this building. It's actually going to be completed in two different stages, right? The first stage completed in 1927, with the second stage being completed in 1987, 60 years later. Look over here to your left. So where can we notice when was that addition added onto the building? We'll see like that row of black glass over there. There's 4 rows of the bubbled out black glass. This is going to be when the addition was made, and it's another way that we show appreciation for the past with using modern materials to reflect previous styles. Another example, well, that's the Wells Street Bridge right in front of us. It's actually an exact replica of the 91-year-old bridge that stood here before until it was replaced. We show reverence for previous architectural styles with modern materials. Again, you'll see that several times on this tour. Right now, we're going to see one of my favorite architectural styles on the entire tour. Take a look over to the right. This is going to be the Merchandise Mart, and the style is Art Deco. The 1920s were the roaring 20s, the jazz age, the glitz and the glamour, right? We want to have our architectural style represent that optimism for a machine-made future. And how do we see that on the Merchandise Mart with Art Deco? Well, you'll see a lot of ornation, decoration, repetitive patterns. You have the octagonal turrets on the sides of the building and in the front, right? And you can also see, my favorite part, the business pinstripe suit. The deep inset windows giving you those vertical racing stripes that represent the sophistication and class of the 1920s. And take a look in front. You notice those Pez dispensers, those heads on the pillars? Why, those are the merchandise princes of the 1920s. Again, showing respect and appreciation for the past. Some famous people that you might know, Sears, Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward, all can be represented on, or all are represented on those nice little Pez dispensers out front. So now we're going to jump from the 1920s to 360 degrees of a world of pure imagination. You're about to enter into Chicago's trophy case, folks, and it's a very special place. Because all of these buildings around us right now were built within the past 6 years. Except for this building over here to the left, the sun reflecting off it. That's the Nuveen building. Chicagoans often voted that as one of their favorites or prettiest buildings in Chicago. Nice example of contextualism. Notice how it curves with the curvature of the Chicago River. Also notice it has alternating colored panes of glass from the green of the emerald green of the Chicago River and the blue of the blue sky, which I'm glad you guys brought the good luck on this boat today because you helped clear up the skies of the overcast and rain, so thank you. And you get to see how it shows contextualism. It's also famous for being the office building of Ferris Bueller's dad in the hit movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Directly in front of you, take a look at River Point. This is what kids often say looks like a Hot Pocket or a McDonald's apple pie box. It has a curvilinear base and curvilinear top. And we'll talk more about this style a little bit later on. But we're in an important part of the Chicago River. This is what puts Chicago on the map, because Wolf Point is where the 3 branches of the Chicago River meet. And Chicago River meets up with Lake Michigan, close to where you guys got on the boat initially. Lake Michigan meets up with the other Great Lakes. So Chicago gets put on the map because it connects the Midwest with the East Coast in the early 1800s. And a lot of agriculture is going to happen in the Great Plains. A lot of livestock is going to happen here. And on the south side, It was seen as a hog butcher capital in the world because we had several slaughterhouses on the south side. And before they would be shipped off to the East Coast, they were put in these giant freezers. And here's an example of one of them from the past. That peach building over to your left, that's Fulton House. Now it's no longer a freezer, but has since been converted to condominiums. So not all buildings are going to be destroyed when they no longer have their original purpose. Rather, they get repurposed. And when they're converting these to condos, they had to cut through 3 feet of matted horsehair and cork in the walls, which was the insulation at the time. And it took 3 months for this building to fully thaw out. Now move over here to the right, folks. You notice that bridge, it's the Carroll Street Bridge, and you might be wondering, well, why is it always up? Or when do they ever lower it down? The answer, once a year for maintenance. Now it's a nice little homage to show, kind of like a great example of what Chicago bridges are. I call them seesaw or teeter-totter bridges, because here's how they operate. Take a look at that giant concrete slab just to the right of the bridge. That's going to operate as a concrete counterweight to move in the opposite direction of where we want the bridge to go. Want to raise the bridge, you lower the concrete counterweight, and vice versa. There's 37 of those bridges in total, but it's a great example of how they work. All right, now bring your attention over there to the left-hand side. These are going to be the river cottages designed in the 1980s by Harry Weiss. So people viewed him as being a foolish man for wanting to build cottages along the Chicago River. Because during the 1800s, 1900s, the Chicago River was heavily polluted up until recent efforts to want to change that. And also the North Branch was seen as the industrial branch of the Chicago River. Critics were saying no one's ever going to want to live next to a bunch of factories and a polluted river, but he saw the opportunity that was the Chicago River. And I want you to see how this attitude changes with where we're at in the North Branch. Look over here to the right. This building is going to be the East Bank Club. And Chicago's royal family, the Obama family, actually used to work out here. So some other cool things to do along the Chicago River. You can do some like kayaking tours as well. There's plenty of different ways to show appreciation for this beautiful water source. But initially, we didn't have that appreciation because you can see it here in the architectural style. This building has its back towards the Chicago River. It sees it as an alleyway or a sewage system, something that should be avoided. But now take a look over here to your left. Look at the river condos. So these were actually just completed in 2001, but they all sold out before they even finalized construction. Why? Because Chicagoans really wanted to move closer to the Chicago River. And here's a quick economics lesson. Since there's such high demand, but only so many different condos, that's going to net a higher price. So these are going to be about $2 million each. And some cool things about some of these condos is you can see how they are turned towards the Chicago River. Their front entrance, their patios are looking towards us rather than away. A great way to show changing appreciation for the Chicago River. So now we're going to do a nice little turnaround here. We're going to start to head down the south branch of the river and see some other cool things. Alright, so great opportunity. Head on downstairs, use the bathroom, go to our full service bar, grab yourself a drink, and I'll be back on the microphone within the next minute or two.
Always summative assessment. Once you know that. There's no study guide though. Imagine I just give you like an essay. You can't lead the boat till you fill this out. 5-paragraph essay.
Is they're asking about the color of the Chicago River. Right? Why does it have that emerald green color? And it's all natural. And here's what gives it its color. Is actually at the bottom, there's a huge concentration of algae that's naturally occurring. Now, the Chicago River itself is not that deep, only about 15 or 20 feet deep at its deepest point. So you can kind of see straight down to the bottom, and the bottom is filled with a bunch of algae. But if you really want to see the Chicago River green, come by during St. Patrick's Day, because the local plumbers union actually have their own special kind of like food dye mix. They don't tell anybody, but they say it's actually made of leprechaun like dust. But no leprechauns are actually harmed in the making of this this concoction, so they say. So something cool to check out, the main branch of the Chicago River that we actually started our tour on. That's really going to put this dye in and gives it a nice vibrant green. So it's another cool iconic Chicago thing to do in case you guys want to come back during those months. It's that weekend right before St. Patrick's Day. All right, now let's go back and talk about the buildings, okay? So some cool things that you'll see, some buildings that you'll see another example of a great building that's going to be under construction, and they pop up really fast, only a couple years actually. So another reason to come back to Chicago is then you can jump back and see me again, because after today, I'm really going to miss you. And another cool thing is that you have no idea how these skylines can change within the matter of a couple years. Because remember, Wolf Point, all these buildings that we saw were constructed and finalized construction, I should say, within the past 6 years. So just imagine 6 years from now, how's our skyline going to change some more? Right, back to the buildings. Remember our good old Hot Pocket building? Well, it's that building right there that's kind of curving outward. Now, a great example of contextualism is over to your right. Because this building right here, this residential building, curves inward at the exact same radius. So, contextualism, making for friendly skylines, trying to fit in rather than stand out. Another good thing to see here is, what is an office building and what's residential? Well, if you see a building that has more of these patios and deck spaces, that's a good giveaway that it's going to be residential. Compare that to the Hot Pocket building, where it's just very sleek and doesn't have any of those. It's a good nod to show that it's going to be more of an office building. Right now, look directly ahead of you, you'll see one of my favorite buildings along the tour. I call it the Y building. Why do I call it the Y building? Well, it's because it looks like a Y. That's 150 North Riverside directly in front of us. But why do they make it look like a Y? Well, it's not to be some kind of cutesy postmodernism. It's actually an awesome engineering feat. Okay, you can see over here, right at the base, there's going to be a bunch of train lines that run through this lot space. And the other difficult thing that is in this building's way is that the city of Chicago requires a 30-foot setback ordinance, meaning buildings need to be built 30 feet away from the Chicago River. Why? Because we can't enjoy a nice Chicago River walk if there's a building in the way. So that base is only 39 feet wide, and this building is only occupying 20% of its lot space. So for the longest time, this lot space was actually vacant of a building because it was so difficult to build a building there. All right? So you might be wondering, well, if it has such a slender base, what's going to prevent Mother Nature from huffing and puffing and blowing this building down in the Windy City? There's going to be 3 ways to reduce sway. All these buildings are actually designed to sway a little bit in either direction by a couple feet. But if they sway too much, then people start to freak out and they get nauseous, and those things aren't good. So the first way to reduce sway is called inertial slosh dampers. Now inside this building, there are 12 tanks full of 160,000 gallons of water, and the idea is when the wind brushes up against the building, the water and the tank slosh back in the opposite direction. So inertial slosh dampers. Another reason I love this building, look over to your right, look up. You can see the prettiest sight on the entire tour. Why, it's all of us. So give yourself a nice selfie of you taking a selfie of yourself. And if you love that, then be sure to head on over to the Beam in Millennium Park and get another selfie of you taking a selfie. Back on over here to the left side, I want to talk about this Bank of America building, and there's a few cool things I want to chit-chat about the good old Bank of America. How much does it cost to build a building along the Chicago River in downtown Chicago? Well, this was about a 3-year, $800 million project. Some cool things about this, the kind of panes of glass look blue. And the idea is they kind of have this reflection upward, so they can reflect the sky. So this building always looks blue because of the reflection in that glass. Some other cool things about this building, take a look at those tripod I-beams. Right, the idea is that they allow the building to abide by that 30-foot setback ordinance. Because you see the building's actually built over the Chicago River, right? But it's not built on the Chicago River. It's just built over, so a cool way to abide by that city ordinance. Now bring it back down to eye level. Look at those steel grates, those tiled grates. Those are actually going to be grates from the exterior of the old office building that stood here before the Bank of America building. Another great homage and appreciation for the past and what came before. Speaking of the past, are you guys ready for me to nerd out a little bit with some history? Cool. All right, here to your right, we're going to hop in the DeLorean, hop in our time machine, and go through 100 years of architectural history. Starting over here to the right.